Jean Myers. She was turning 45 and decided to host a birthday party at her home. Tamla was invited to attend this birthday party, and she was delighted to be included. She was the only black woman at the party. Everyone else was white, and that's the last time anyone would ever see Tamla alive.
Forsyth County 911.
Hi, yes. I need an ambulance and a police to my home.
What is your name?
My name is Jean Myers, Jeanne.
Okay, what's going on?
We had people over last night. We were drinking. Most of us went to bed. One of them stayed on the balcony. She was drinking, and we just went outside, and she's laying face down in the backyard. It looks like, I'm guessing maybe she fell off the balcony, but she's stiff.
Okay, is she breathing?
Hey, this is Jose Barrera.
Hey, have y'all checked to see if she's breathing?
She's not moving one bit. She's not breathing.
Okay.
I just try to assess her, touch her. She's completely face down in the yard. She is stiff.
Tamla Horsford is a woman from the Caribbean who moved to the United States. She settled down and got married with a man named Leander, who she referred to as Lee. The couple had 5 kids together, 5 boys. Tamla loved being a mother to these young boys. She was a very loving and giving person. All 5 of Tamla's children were talented athletes. They were all very involved in football and had promising futures in the sport. The family relocated to Cumming, Georgia in Forsyth County so the boys could have a better opportunity to play football. This area of Georgia is known for having an extremely racist past. Back in 1912, the white residents of the county actually forced all of the black people out. They forced them to move. They forced approximately 1,098 black people out of the county. They warned them that if they stayed in town, they would burn down their houses. This county tried to keep this whites-only mentality well into the 1980s. In 1987, there was a march through the town to draw awareness of the horrible treatment and racism within this community. And while this was attempted to be a peaceful march through the town, some of the white residents actually were harassing and throwing rocks at those who were marching. A few weeks later, another march was held and was very strong and successful with 20,000 participants. Present day, things are supposedly better, but there are definitely still some discrepancies. Things are certainly not perfect, and it's still a very conservative area. Over time, the family settled into Forsyth County quite nicely. The boys were excelling in football, and the family was quickly making friends. Most of Tamla's friends ended up being the parents of her kids' friends, mostly football moms. One of the football moms, Jean Myers, had a birthday coming up. She was turning 45 and decided to host a birthday party at her home. It would be an all-girls sleepover at her house. Tamla was invited to attend this birthday party, and she was delighted to be included. The party took place on November 3rd, 2018. Once the boys were settled in for the night, Tamla made her way over to the party. When she eventually arrived at the birthday party, she saw a bunch of the other football moms were already there, drinking, having a good time. She was the only black woman at the party. Everyone else was white, which wasn't too out of the ordinary, given that the population in Forsyth County is predominantly white. Around this time, the population was about 96% white. So there were in fact 2 men at this party, but the rest of the party guests were female. Drinks were flowing at this party. It was said that Tamla in particular was pretty, but that she was handling her alcohol very well. She held herself together. The party carried on well into the night and into the wee hours of the morning. Supposedly, Tamla and Bridget Fuller were the last ones still awake at this party. They were still awake around 1:45 a.m. Bridget's husband came and picked her up around 1:45 a.m. She said goodbye to Tamla, and that's the last time anyone would ever see Tamla alive. The following morning, the morning of November 4th, 2018, around 8:30 a.m., a woman named Madeline, who is John's aunt, who also lives in this house, wakes up. She went into the kitchen to start making coffee, and as she was doing so, she looked out the window and saw a lifeless body laying face down on the ground and knew instantly that it was Tamla. Now, apparently, according to Madeline in her police interview, her next course of action was to get on her knees and pray. Kind of a strange reaction. I would think anyone's first reaction would be to go outside and help or to check up on the person. Then she ran upstairs to Jean's room. The door was shut, so she knocked on the door. There was no answer, but she thought she heard running water. So she thought maybe Jean is taking a shower. Madeline then went back downstairs and looked out the window again. Tamla's body was still there. And then Madeleine ran back up the stairs a second time and started banging on Jean's door louder. This time, Jean answers the door. Madeleine says she needs to speak to Jean's boyfriend, Jose. It's important to note that Jose worked in law enforcement, so wanting to speak to Jose seems to make sense to me. So Madeleine frantically tells them that she found Tamla laying face down in the backyard, not moving. So they go into the backyard to take a closer look. Jose touched Tamla's back to check if she was breathing, but it appeared that she was not breathing. Jose tried to move Tamla's leg, but he couldn't. It was already stiff. Rigor mortis had already set in. I think it's kind of strange that the first thing you do is hand on the back and move her leg. I think if I were in that terrifying situation, I would try and flip the body over, at least try and give CPR. At 8:59 a.m., Jean calls 911 to fill in the dispatcher on the situation at her house. On the call, Jean suggests that Tamla had been drinking and that she may have fallen off the balcony, which could have led to her death, but it was just speculation. She doesn't actually know what went down the night before. Then Jean passes the phone off to Jose and he speaks with the 911 dispatcher. At one point in the call, Jose mentions seeing a small cut on Tamla's wrists and insinuates that it may be from self-harm. He says, I don't know if this cut was self-inflicted. Now, mind you, there are several different types of injuries on Tamla's body at this point. Strange to point out a small cut on her wrist and automatically jump to self-harm as the explanation. Then Jose tells the police that maybe she fell from the balcony. Then he remembers that they actually have cameras up there on the balcony, which is great news. Maybe they have evidence on what happened up on the balcony and could clear everything up. Well, guess what? Somehow the footage from that night accidentally got deleted. What are the chances? Super sketchy. Anyway, the proper authorities arrived at the scene around 9 a.m. that morning. They went into the home and immediately out into the backyard to inspect the body, which they immediately determined that Tamla was in fact deceased. Then the coroner and CSI arrived at the scene. They found Tamla's body. Her head was still face down. Her arms were sprawled out. One arm down by her side and the other arm up near her head. One of her wrists was severely injured. It was dislocated. I'm assuming maybe she was trying to catch herself from falling, trying to break her fall. Those investigating the scene thought that the body was in a strange position and found it even stranger that there was a lack of blood surrounding the body. Her body was sent out for an autopsy. The party guests were called to return to the crime scene to be interviewed. Jean was interviewed. She said Sarah and Nicole left the party around 10:30 p.m. They were the first to leave the party. All of the guests being interviewed agreed that at some point, Tamla wanted to leave the house early in the morning. She had expressed that she wanted to leave, but they wouldn't let her because she had been drinking too much. Why she wanted to leave wasn't entirely clear. But here's where things start to get a little messy. Some of the people's stories started to change. They were not consistent with recounting what happened that night. If you recall, Jose said he was woken up by Madeleine, who told him of Tamla's body in the backyard. Then he got up and went to check things out. But in the official police report, it said that Jose was cleaning up the following morning and found an unlit cigarette and a lighter lying on the porch. The brand of cigs matched the ones that Tamla smoked. And then some of the other partygoers started saying that when they woke up, they started cleaning up. But I thought that Madeleine was the first to wake up and find the body and then go wake up Jose and Jean. Now the story has changed that everyone was awake and cleaning? Or did Madeleine wake you with the news and you started cleaning before checking on Tamla? At one point, Jose said the last time he actually saw Tamla was at 1 a.m. in the kitchen. She was deciding if she should go home now or wait until the morning. Later, he changed it to he last saw Tamla at 1:30 a.m., where she told him she was going to go outside for one last cigarette and then go up and sleep in a guest bedroom. The following day, Tamla's autopsy report comes back, and it says that Tamla's blood alcohol content was at a whopping 0.24. So she definitely was that night. There were traces of both in her system at the time of her death. The was no surprise, as witnesses at the party agreed that there was smoking happening at the house, but the was out of nowhere, and they didn't find any other pills of on Tamla's body or in her belongings, in her purse or jacket. So could Tamla possibly have been or someone had given it to her and she took it willingly. The autopsy report also determined that her wrist was broken and there were lacerations on her wrist, left forearm, her fingers, her shins, severe injuries on her head, neck, and torso. Then there were also several superficial abrasions on her forehead, her chin, her temple, and above her eye. There was also a fracture of her second vertebrae and a laceration on the right ventricle of her heart. They ruled Tomla's official cause of death to be from multiple blunt force injuries. They also mysteriously didn't take any photos of this autopsy, which is a standard procedure. And what's strange is that there were no facial bones broken. If you fell face first from the balcony and slammed your face into the ground, I'm sure at the very least you break your nose, right? So maybe Tomla didn't fall from the balcony. But if she didn't fall from the balcony, then what really happened to her that night? Well, Tomla's family was very suspicious about this whole ordeal. They felt the party was suspicious, finding her body in an odd position in the backyard was suspicious, and people's stories combined with the autopsy was suspicious. So they decided to hire an independent medical examiner to conduct a second autopsy. Well, all of the partygoers' statements of recounting the night were conflicting. There were a lot of discrepancies in the interviews. A lot of the interviews were conducted at Jean's house days after the incident, and during an interview with Madeleine, the one who allegedly found Tomla's body the morning of November 3rd, Jean apparently barged in. Now, these interviews are supposed to be one-on-one, no distractions or outside influence. But Jean comes in and says like, "Hey, police officers, what you doing? Look, I just bought y'all gift cards." And jokes around with them, saying I should start charging y'all rent for staying in my house so much. Very odd. She seems very familiar with the police. And what are the gift cards for? Sounds like a bribe to me. Why are you bribing them, Jean? What do you have to hide? And then there was Jean's interview with the investigative police, which was pretty strange. She was all over the place. Seemed like maybe she was even flirting with the cops. She was even referring to the cop by his first name. Instead of calling him officer, she was calling him Mike. Super rude, super informal, and not a professional thing to do at a time like this, when you're being investigated for a potential murder. Okay, but in this interview with Jean, she somewhat contradicts Madeleine's version of what happened. She contradicts Madeleine's whole interview. Reminder, Madeleine's version of what happened is going to the kitchen in the morning to make coffee, looking out the window and seeing Tomla's body, dropping to her knees and praying, and then going to Jean's room to inform them of the situation. Meanwhile, Jean's version of what happened goes like this. Jean claims that Madeleine, who lives in the house with Jean, always goes outside in the morning to check the weather because she's still adjusting to the weather down in Georgia. So Jean says Madeleine walked outside and saw Tomla's body, then came inside and washed her face or splashed cold water on her face because perhaps she thought she was seeing things. Then she went back outside in the backyard and saw Tomla again laying on the ground. Then she went back into the house, knocked on Jean's door. Jean didn't hear her the first time she knocked. Jean's boyfriend then made his way downstairs. He yelled at Jean to bring her phone down the stairs. Then Jean says she handed her boyfriend Jose the phone to talk to the police. But if you recall from the 911 audio that was played earlier, Jean spoke to the cops first and then passed the phone over to Jose. So Jean is obviously lying about what happened in this interview because there's phone call evidence that proves that. And then Jean tells the police that when she went outside and saw Tomla's body, she described the scene and said both of Tomla's arms were down by her side. However, when the cops actually arrived at the scene, one arm was by her side and the other one was sprawled out. So is Jean misremembering what happened, or was the body moved after being found? Or is Jean just lying again? Okay, also in this interview, the police addressed the strange gift card thing, probably just to get it on record. The police were like, Jean, you came into the room when we were interviewing Madeleine. And while we appreciate the thought of you going to get us a gift card, we cannot accept it because obviously that would look really weird. Next interview was Jose Barrera's interview. The police officer said somebody must have moved one of Tomla's arms into that position because you said previously you found her with her arms by her side, but we found her with one arm sprawled out above her head. Jose says it's correct. The police ask him, do you know who moved her arm? Jose says he has no clue. So now at least we have some clarity that the arm was in fact moved. But the question remains, who moved Tomla's arm? And why did they move her arm? Was it to put her in a position to make her look like she fell? Were they trying to make it look like an accident? Well, get this. Jose Barrera, as you remember, worked in law enforcement. Turns out, shortly after Tamla's death, Jose was fired. What was he fired for? He was illegally using his work computer to access confidential files pertaining to Tamla's death. He was snooping around trying to spy on this investigation. Just days after the death, he supposedly went into Tamla's incident report file. This reads really guilty to me. It feels to me like he was going back to read these official reports to make sure he didn't say anything incriminating, and that any of the other party guests who were interviewed didn't say anything that would incriminate him either. And remember when Jose said in the beginning that there was a security camera on the balcony of that porch and that would have evidence of what happened? Well, Jean accidentally deleted that footage. I mentioned earlier that Tamla's family had a second autopsy done on the body. Just recently, Tamla Horsford's husband's attorney, Ralph Fernandez, released the full independent autopsy performed by medical examiner Dr. Adele Shocker. I know this was a homicide, Fernandez said. The problem is, I can't pin it on anybody because I don't have a badge. The second autopsy revealed that some of the injuries and wounds found on Tamla's body were inflicted post-mortem. So that means someone had to inflict these injuries to the body after Tamla was deceased. Even with all the conflicting information and sketchiness from everyone who was at that party, they ruled the death as accidental and wanted to close this case just a month after it happened. But present day, the case is back open and the police are still seeking answers. What we know about this case is that Tamla Horsford was the only black woman attending the party, and her family and supporters have alleged that her death may have been a result of foul play, and that the initial investigation was flawed. Some have raised concerns about potential racial bias and a lack of thorough investigation by law enforcement. The case has attracted national attention and has become a rallying point for calls for greater police accountability and transparency. It's worth noting that the case has received renewed attention in recent months due to social media campaigns and increased public scrutiny of cases involving black women and girls who have died under suspicious circumstances. The hashtag Justice for Tamla Horsford has been used widely on social media, and supporters have organized rallies and other events to raise awareness about the case and call for accountability. If the security footage hadn't been deleted, I am positive that it would incriminate Jean and Jose, and they would be arrested, put behind bars immediately. What I'm not sure of is if anyone else at the party was involved, or if they even know anything. Did someone at the party see what happened to Tamla and just not speak up? If Jean and Jose did end Tamla's life, and someone at the party witnessed it, safe to assume that person would then be scared for their own life and not want to rat out Jean and Jose. I think one day the truth will come out. As of April 2023, the case remains unresolved, and Horsford's family and supporters continue to call for a further investigation into the circumstances surrounding her death. I'm Brandy, and thank you for watching another episode of the true crime show, Killer Bites. Stay safe out there. See you next time.